She is not afraid of you. That is the first thing you need to hear. And I know it is not what you came here for. She is not lying awake because she thinks you will call. She is not checking the door. Whatever fear is following her, it is not wearing your face. It is wearing hers. And that is a far heavier thing to carry. My name is George, and I have sat across enough kitchen tables from enough men who did everything right and still got left to know exactly what happens in the weeks after. You replay it. You audit yourself. You go looking for the sentence you should have said differently, the night you should have stayed up, the promise you kept quietly instead of loudly. And somewhere in that audit, a voice starts whispering that being good was the mistake. That if you had been a little colder, a little harder to reach, a little more willing to walk out first, you would still have her. I want to take that voice apart today, layer by layer, because there is something happening underneath this that almost nobody names. And once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. There are 3 layers to what happened to you. The first layer is what everybody sees. The second layer is what was actually going on behind it. And the third layer, the one that will take some courage to look at, is what God was doing the entire time you thought he had gone silent. Let's start with the surface. Layer 1. What everybody sees here is the version your friends know. You were good to her. Not perfect. Good, you showed up. You worked the overtime and did not complain about it out loud. You learned her family's birthdays. You fixed things in her mother's house without being asked twice. When she was anxious at 2 in the morning, you sat up with her, and you did not check your phone while she talked. And then one day, she was done. Maybe it happened fast. Maybe it happened so slowly that you did not notice the temperature dropping until you were already cold. Maybe there was someone else. Maybe there wasn't. And maybe that not knowing is its own splinter under the fingernail. Either way, she went, and the people who love you responded the way people always do. They said she'll regret it. They said give it 6 months. They said you dodged a bullet, brother, and you nodded, because what else do you do? But none of it touched the place that was actually hurting. Because here is what nobody in that circle of encouragement understood. You were not grieving the relationship. Not really. You were grieving something much stranger and much harder to say out loud. You were grieving the version of yourself you had built for her. Think about that for a second. Every good man builds something. A self that is steadier than he naturally is. Patience he did not have at 22. A temper he learned to hold with both hands. A way of walking into a room quietly so the woman he loves is not startled by his size or his volume or his bad day. That construction takes years, and it costs something every single day. And then she leaves, and you are standing there holding a building with nobody in it. That is the surface. That is what everyone sees. A man who was good and got left, standing in the parking lot of his own life after the late shift, keys in his hand, sitting in the truck for 20 minutes before he can make himself drive home to a house where nothing needs him. If that is where this video stopped, it would be another one of those messages that tells you to hit the gym and get your money right, and she'll come crawling back. That is not this message, because underneath that surface, something else entirely was happening. Layer 2. What was actually happening, let me tell you about a vessel. In the old world, a clay vessel was not decoration. It was survival. It carried the water, the oil, the grain that stood between a family and hunger. And it had one job to hold: to keep the inside inside. Nobody looked at a clay pot and wondered what it was made of. As long as it held, it was invisible. That is the strange dignity of a vessel. The better it does its job, the less anyone notices it exists. Now, what happens when a vessel breaks? Everything inside comes out, all at once. Whatever was in there, hidden, contained, carried quietly for years the moment the clay gives way. It is on the floor for everyone to see. And here is the part I need you to sit with. When you were broken, and you were, let's not be delicate about it. Something in you cracked what came out of you? Be honest with yourself. Because I have watched this go both ways. I have seen men break, and what leaked out was poison. Years of it, contempt they had been swallowing, rage they had been calling patience, a reservoir of resentment stored under the floorboards of the marriage. The vessel cracked, and the neighborhood found out what had been in there the whole time. But some of you, and if you are still watching, I suspect you are one of them, some of you broke. And what came out was light. You did not burn her house down. You did not go to her friends with a list. You did not use the children as leverage. You did not put her business on the internet at 1 in the morning when the loneliness was loudest and the temptation was reasonable. You had the ammunition. Everyone in your position has the ammunition. You just would not pick it up. You sat in the dark, and you leaked light instead. And you thought nobody saw it. She saw it. That is layer 2. That is the thing underneath. She was not only present for your breaking, she was the one who found out what you were actually made of. Not what you said you were made of on your best day, standing in a suit, promising things in front of a pastor. What you were made of on the floor. What was inside the clay when the clay stopped being able to hold. And a person cannot unknow that. You can leave a man. You can move states. You can change your number, your church, your last name. But you cannot go back to not knowing what you saw when the vessel broke. Joseph in the pit there is a boy in Scripture that I cannot stop thinking about when I talk to men like you. Joseph, 17 years old, loved by his father in a way that made his brothers sick to their stomachs. And one afternoon, out in the open country where nobody was watching, those brothers put their hands on him and threw him into a dry cistern. We tell that story like it is about the coat. It is not about the coat. Read what they said years later when they were standing in front of an Egyptian official and did not know they were talking to him. They said, "We saw the distress of his soul when he pleaded with us, and we would not listen." They heard him. That is the detail that goes through me every time. They sat down and ate a meal beside that pit while he begged. Whatever came out of Joseph in that hole, the pleading, the disbelief, the sound a 17-year-old makes when the people who share his blood look down at him and decide he is inventory, they heard all of it. And then they sold him and went home and lied to their father's face. Now here is the question nobody asks about that story. How did those brothers sleep? For 22 years, they lived normal lives. They married. They had children. They buried people and celebrated harvests and told jokes at the table. And every single one of those years, there was a room inside each of them, with a boy still in it, still asking why. They did not throw a bad man into that pit. That is the whole problem. If Joseph had been cruel, if he had earned it, they could have made peace with it. Men make peace with the things they do to bad men. They threw a good one in. And a good man in a pit becomes a permanent address in your memory. You can move. He stays. Layer 3. What God was doing, now we go down to the bottom. And this is where I need you to be brave with me. You have been asking why God let it happen. I know you have, because everybody does. You prayed over that relationship. You prayed on the drive home. You prayed in that empty church on a Tuesday afternoon, with the lights half off, sitting in the back row where nobody would find you. saying, "God, I am doing everything I know how to do. Do something." And nothing moved. So you drew the only conclusion available to a man in pain. Either he was not listening, or you were not worth the intervention. Both are wrong. Let me show you a third option. There is a kind of testimony that cannot be spoken. It can only be witnessed. You can stand in front of a congregation and describe your character for an hour and change nobody. But let one person watch you get destroyed and refuse to become cruel about it, and that person is marked for life. Not because of anything you said, because of what they saw come out of the crack. God did not fail to protect you. He let you become a witness. And that word means something different than we usually use it for. A witness is not the lawyer. A witness does not argue or persuade. A witness simply was there, and saw, and cannot unsee. The whole power of a witness is that they were present when the truth happened. You were not the witness in that room. She was. She witnessed a man who had every legitimate reason to become bitter, and did not take it. She witnessed someone praying for her while she was actively hurting him. She witnessed the exact thing that most people go their entire lives insisting does not exist anymore. A man who was good when being good cost him everything and bought him nothing. And I want to be very careful here, because this is where a lot of these messages go somewhere ugly. I am not telling you she is suffering. I am not telling you to enjoy the thought of her suffering. If that is what you came for, I have nothing for you, and I would rather you close this than take that with you. What I am telling you is quieter and heavier than revenge. She now has a standard she did not have before. The fear, named properly, let me tell you what that fear actually is. Not the version in the title. The real one. It is not fear of you. It is not fear that you will come back and make her pay. It is not even fear of losing you. She chose that. It is the fear of measurement. Before you, she could believe a comfortable thing, that men are basically the same, that they all reach a limit selfish, or cold, or absent, and the trick to life is finding one whose particular failure you can tolerate. That belief is a shelter. It lets you leave anyone without grief. Because there is always another one, roughly equivalent, waiting. You took that shelter down. Not on purpose. You would have preferred to keep her more than you would have preferred to prove a point. But you broke in front of her, and the light came out instead of the poison. And now she has seen the thing exist. So from here forward, every man she sits across from gets measured. Not out loud, not consciously, most of the time. But there will be an evening, maybe 2 years from now, maybe 10, when somebody raises his voice at her over something small, or goes silent for 3 days to punish her, or says the thing that is designed to leave a bruise nobody can photograph. And in that moment, a door will open in the back of her mind. And behind that door will be a man sitting in a truck in a parking lot, refusing to say the cruel thing he had every right to say. That is the fear. The fear of having held something rare in your hands and having called it ordinary. And that fear does not need you to do anything. It does not need your Instagram. It does not need you to get rich or get ripped or get seen with somebody younger. It is entirely self-sustaining. Because it is not built out of what she lost. It is built out of what she now knows. Go back to Joseph's brothers. When their father Jacob finally died, decades after the pit, those grown men panicked. Scripture says they sent a message to Joseph, begging, "Now that our father is dead, what if he pays us back for all the evil we did to him?" Understand the situation. Joseph had already fed them, already housed them, already wept over them so loudly the Egyptians in the next room heard it. Nothing but good, for years. and they were still afraid. Why? Because their fear had never been about what Joseph might do. Their fear was about what they had done. Every act of kindness he showed them made it worse, not better. Because every kindness was another piece of evidence about the kind of man they had put in a hole. That is what nobody tells you. Goodness is not a shield. Goodness is a record. George's confession. And the 7 keys. I am going to be honest with you about something, because I do not think I can ask you to be brave with me and not do it myself. There was a season in my life where I was the man in the pit, and I did not leak light. I leaked everything else. I said things to a woman I had promised God I would protect that I would give years off my life to take back. I was righteous in public and rotten in the car on the way home, and when it ended, I told everyone I had been the good one, and I said it so many times that I almost believed it. It took a long time before I could sit with what was actually inside me when the clay gave way. And here is what I learned in that long, ugly stretch. What comes out of you when you break is not decided in the breaking. It is decided in the years before, in 1,000 invisible moments nobody claps for. The vessel is formed long before it is ever tested, which means if light came out of you, that was not luck. That was deposit. Something was placed in you and cultivated in you, probably long before you had language for it, and probably by a God you were not fully paying attention to at the time. That is the part most men never sit down and examine. The calling is wide. The instructions reach only a few. If there is a burning in your spirit right now, do not minimize it. That is the sign. The secret protocol delivers the 7 keys God reserved for those who are ready to unlock what was sealed inside them before birth. The full audiobook is included to absorb in depth, in your own time, in the presence of God. And the Awakening Map, the bonus guide that reveals the 5 stages of spiritual awakening and positions you with precision at the exact point of your journey today. Link pinned in the first comment. For a limited time, only because not every door stays open forever. I am not telling you that a book fixes a broken heart. It does not. Nothing does, except time and God and probably some honest conversations you have been avoiding. But I am telling you that the man who understands what was deposited in him stops needing the person who left to validate it. And that is the difference between healing and waiting. The trap on the other side. Now I have to warn you about something. And this is the part where I might lose some of you. There is a trap sitting on the other side of everything I just said. And it has caught more good men than the breakup ever did. The trap is this. You take what I told you about the fear and the measurement and the record, and you turn it into a strategy. You start managing your image so she hears about it. You post the workout. You post the new job. You make sure the mutual friend has something to report. You stay good technically, but the goodness stops being goodness and starts being a performance aimed at one seat in the audience. Listen to me carefully. The moment your integrity becomes a message to her, it stops being integrity. It becomes a longer, more sophisticated form of begging. And she will feel it. People always feel it. The whole reason your goodness landed the way it did is that it was not aimed at anyone. Aim it, and it becomes something calculated, something that smells like every other man who ever tried to win, by looking unbothered. Joseph did not spend 22 years in Egypt building a case against his brothers. He was in prison. He was forgotten by a man who promised to remember him. He interpreted dreams for people who walked out and never mentioned his name again. And there is not one line in that entire story where he is rehearsing what he will say to Reuben one day. He was busy being who he was, in rooms where none of them could see him. That is the whole assignment. Be the same man in the rooms where it earns you nothing. Because here is the thing about a vessel that leaks light. It does not choose who walks past. It just leaks. And most of the people who will be changed by what is in you are not going to be her. They are going to be your son. Watching how you talk about his mother when you think he is asleep. The guy at work who is 3 weeks from doing something he cannot undo. Watching how you carry yourself and deciding not to. The woman who comes into your life in 4 years and cannot believe such a thing is still standing. The light was never for her. She was just in the room. What to do with Monday? Let me get practical for a minute. Because I know some of you are hearing all this at 11 at night, in a supermarket aisle, with a basket you do not really need. And what you actually want to know is how to get through tomorrow. 3 things. First, stop auditing the tape. You have played that last conversation 400 times, looking for the moment you could have saved it. There is no such moment. Relationships do not end at a sentence, they end at a long accumulation, and most of it was never yours to control. Every hour in that courtroom is an hour spent prosecuting a man who already served his sentence. Second, refuse the conversion. This culture will try to convert your pain into contempt. There is an entire industry built on taking men who were hurt by one woman and selling them a philosophy about all of them. It feels like armor. It is a slower version of the same wound, and it will cost you the exact thing that made you worth loving. Do not trade the light for the armor. You will never get the light back at the same price. Third, let somebody see you. Not the whole world. One man. One friend, one brother, one guy in a garage on a Saturday with the door open and the radio low. You need one person who knows the real version and does not flinch. A vessel being repaired has to be held while it sets. That is not weakness. That is how clay works. And through all of it, keep talking to God even badly. Especially badly. Some of the most honest prayers I have ever heard were not sentences. They were a man in a work shirt, in a folding chair, saying the same 3 words over and over, because that was all that would come out. He hears the distress of the soul. That is the one line from Joseph's story that his brothers could not shake for 22 years. And it is the line I want you to keep. They heard it and would not listen. God heard it and never stopped. The thing she cannot escape, so let me bring this all the way home. The title of this video says there is a fear she can never escape. I have taken you down 3 layers to show you what it actually is. And I want to say it one more time in plain language, because a lot of men will hear a message like this and take the wrong thing from it. It is not a curse. Nobody put anything on her. It is not punishment. God is not running a revenge department on your behalf. It is simply the permanent consequence of having witnessed something real. She held a clay vessel, and she assumed it was like every other clay vessel, and she let it fall, and then it broke, and light came out, and now she knows that some vessels are filled with something else. That knowledge is not a wound. It is a standard. And a standard, once you have it, cannot be lowered back down to where it used to be. It just sits there, quietly, measuring everything that comes after. Maybe one day it drives her to her knees, and she becomes a better woman for someone else. I hope so. And if that sentence makes something in you tighten up, that tightness is worth praying about tonight. Maybe she never fully understands what she was standing next to. Either way, it is not your assignment anymore. Your assignment is the vessel. Yours cracked. That happened. There is a seam in you now that was not there 3 years ago, and I am not going to insult you by promising it will close completely. Some seams do not. But a cracked vessel that has been in the hands of God does something a perfect one never could. It lets the light get out. A sealed pot holds everything and shows nothing. A broken one is the only kind anybody can see into. You spent years being invisible because you did your job well. The clay held, so nobody looked at it. The clay is not holding anymore. And for the first time in your life, people can see what was inside the whole time. Before you go, I want you to do something for me in the comments. And I want it specific, because I have read enough one-word comments to last me a lifetime, and none of them ever helped anybody. Tell me about the moment you found out what was inside you. Not the breakup. Not her. I mean the moment right after the vessel cracked, the night you had the cruel thing loaded and ready. The message typed out. The phone call you could have made. The piece of information you could have handed to exactly the right person to do maximum damage. And you put it down. Where were you standing? What time was it? What did you do instead? Write it down for me. Somebody is going to scroll past your comment in the middle of their own worst night, and your paragraph will be the thing that keeps them from becoming someone they cannot come back from. That is not a small thing. That is the light doing exactly what light does. Joseph's brothers ate lunch beside a pit and heard a boy begging and did nothing. 22 years later, they were still standing in front of him, shaking, waiting for a punishment that never came, because the man they threw away had spent those years becoming the only person in the room capable of saving them. You are not in the pit forever, and what God is doing down there in the dark with your broken pieces has nothing to do with her anymore, and everything to do with the rooms you have not walked into yet. Go be the light that gets out.